The man arrived in Orange County with the quiet determination of someone who believed he was beginning again. He did not think of it as running. At 55, Kwong had perfected the art of shrinking himself into spaces. He had done it in Tennessee for decades, small apartments, temporary jobs, passing acquaintances who never stayed long enough to ask questions. His life had been a hallway of closed doors. He preferred it that way. Silence meant safety. Distance meant control. But something inside him had begun to rot. It was not visible at first. Rot never is. It begins in the unseen corners, in thoughts replayed too many times, in grudges that never cool, in loneliness that hardens into resentment. By the time Kwong packed his belongings into 2 suitcases and boarded a bus west, the rot had already taken root. He told himself this was reinvention. California would be different. A clean slate, a chance to step into a version of himself that people might actually welcome. He arrived with the smell of recycled bus air still clinging to his clothes. Orange County glowed in the late afternoon. Sunburned sidewalks, palm shadows stretching long and thin, everything felt open, temporary, possible. He checked into a cheap motel and immediately opened Craigslist. The search felt ritualistic. Scroll, scan, reject. Scroll again. Then he saw it. Roommate wanted. Clean apartment, looking for someone normal. The word normal hooked into him like a barb. Normal. He read the listing 3 times, memorizing its tone. Friendly, casual. The poster described herself briefly, a student, organized, respectful. The photos showed a tidy apartment with sunlight pooling on hardwood floors, a space that felt lived in, warm. He stared at the screen longer than necessary. This was it. He typed his message carefully, revising every sentence until it sounded harmless, mature, reliable. He erased any phrasing that might feel desperate. When he finally hit send, his heart thudded against his ribs with a strange, electric anticipation. Her reply came that evening. She signed her name, Maribel. The name lingered in his thoughts like a melody he couldn't shake. The apartment smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and something floral. The scent struck Kwong immediately. Clean, welcoming, human. He stood just inside the doorway, aware of the soft hum of domestic life around him. A dog toy near the couch, a mug in the sink, shoes aligned neatly by the wall, proof of routine, of belonging. Maribel greeted him with an easy smile. She had the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. Confident posture, relaxed voice, eyes that met his directly without suspicion. He noticed how comfortable she seemed in her own space. He envied that. Their conversation was brief, practical, rent, schedules, shared responsibilities. She spoke with the efficiency of someone used to structure. He nodded often, mirroring her calm. He felt accepted. By the end of the visit, the apartment already felt like something he could inhabit, a role he could step into, a version of himself that fit the furniture. When she agreed to let him move in, relief washed through him with almost physical force. He thanked her more times than necessary. The first weeks passed quietly. Kwong kept his presence minimal. He rose early, moved softly, cleaned surfaces that didn't need cleaning. He paid rent on time, placed receipts neatly on the counter. He cultivated invisibility, the ideal roommate. But invisibility didn't mean he wasn't watching. He noticed Maribel's routines with meticulous attention. The way she fed the dog before making coffee, the rhythm of her footsteps down the hallway. The nights she returned late from class, shoulders slumped with fatigue. Her life had structure, purpose, movement. His revolved around hers. He did not think of it as obsession. He thought of it as appreciation. When she invited him to dinner with her family, the request startled him. No one had extended that kind of gesture in years. The warmth of the invitation unsettled him in ways he couldn't articulate. The dinner was loud, full of laughter that bounced off the walls. Plates passed hand to hand, stories overlapped. Kwong smiled when expected, nodded at the right moments, absorbing the chaos like a sponge. This, he realized, was what normal people had. Connection, noise, belonging. And for the first time in years, he sat in the middle of it. Something inside him stirred. Months passed, and the apartment settled into a rhythm that felt permanent. Shared grocery runs, casual walks with the dog, small domestic rituals that wove their lives together in subtle threads. Kwong began to anticipate her movements. He could tell what mood she was in by the way she closed the door. He recognized her footsteps in the hallway instantly. He memorized her laughter, the cadence, the pauses, the way it softened at the end. His thoughts lingered on her longer than they should. At night, he replayed their conversations, searching for hidden meanings. A smile held too long, a joke shared, a glance that might have meant something more. His mind filled in the gaps. He began to imagine futures that had never been offered. In those imagined futures, they moved through life together seamlessly. Partners, companions, inevitable. He constructed scenes in vivid detail, shared holidays, quiet mornings, the comfort of proximity. Each fantasy made reality feel thinner. He did not notice when appreciation transformed into entitlement. He only felt the certainty growing. She was meant to understand eventually. The realization struck him one evening as they returned from a walk. The sun dipped low, casting the apartment in amber light. Maribel laughed at something trivial, a story about class, and the sound settled deep in his chest. He looked at her and felt something click into place. Clarity. He mistook it for love. The certainty was overwhelming, absolute. He had spent months orbiting her life, absorbing her warmth, her structure, her presence. In his mind, proximity had become destiny. He convinced himself the feeling must be mutual. Why else would she include him? Trust him? Invite him into her family circle? The conclusion felt logical, inevitable. He barely slept that night. His thoughts spiraled, rehearsing what he would say. He imagined her surprise melting into understanding, gratitude, relief that he had spoken first. By morning, the decision was solid. He would tell her, and once spoken, everything would change. He believed this with the quiet conviction of someone who had rewritten reality in his favor. The apartment was still when he stepped into the hallway. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window. The dog stirred in its sleep. Maribel hummed softly as she poured coffee. The moment felt ordinary. Perfect. He approached with a strange calm settling over him. His heartbeat slowed, his thoughts aligned into a single unwavering intention. He opened his mouth, and in that instant, suspended between expectation and consequence, the fragile world he had constructed teetered on the edge of collapse. Because reality does not bend to fantasy. And when fantasy shatters, something darker often crawls out from beneath it, something patient, something wounded, something that had been rotting quietly inside him long before he ever arrived. If you want, say continue, and I'll write part 2, where rejection turns into psychological fracture and the horror deepens. The moment did not explode, it folded. Kwong spoke, and the words came out steady, too steady, like something rehearsed in front of a mirror. He told her he wanted more, that he saw a future, that they belonged together. He said it like a fact, not a feeling. For a heartbeat, the room held still. Maribel didn't laugh. She didn't look angry. She looked confused. Her eyes searched his face like she was trying to find the joke hidden somewhere inside it. There wasn't one. The air changed. She spoke carefully, slowly, each word chosen like it might set something off. She told him she cared about him as a friend, only a friend. She said it kindly, but kindness has edges when it's cutting through someone's fantasy. He felt the words land inside him like small stones. Friend. Just friend. His mind rejected it instantly. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. The sunlight looked wrong, too bright, like a spotlight exposing something fragile. He stared at her mouth as she spoke, watching the shape of rejection form again and again. No anger rose at first, only disbelief. His thoughts scrambled to fix the moment. Maybe she misunderstood. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she needed time. Yes, that had to be it. She just didn't see clearly yet. He smiled, nodded, said he understood. He did not. Something inside him shifted quietly, a thin crack spreading through glass, and he walked away, carrying it. That night, the apartment sounded different. Every creak felt deliberate. Every footstep in the hallway echoed like a reminder that reality had betrayed him. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation until the words lost their meaning. His brain tried to rewrite it. In one version, she said yes. In another, she apologized for hesitating. He built entire scenes where she realized her mistake and came to his door, whispering his name like a confession. But every fantasy collapsed against the same truth. She didn't want him. The crack widened, his chest filled with a pressure that didn't feel like sadness. It felt heavier, hotter, like humiliation fermenting into something sour. He sat up in bed, breathing hard. Why didn't she understand? Hadn't he been perfect? Quiet, reliable, present. He had given her respect, loyalty, time. He had woven himself into her life with care, and she dismissed it like it was nothing. The thought made his stomach twist. His brain searched for balance, for a reason that didn't paint him as small. And slowly, almost gently, it found one. She was wrong. Not cruel, not evil, just wrong. And wrong things could be corrected. The idea settled into him like a seed finding soil. He lay back down. Sleep did not come, but something else did. Resolve. The next morning, he studied her. Not openly. He was careful. His gaze slid toward her when she wasn't looking. He cataloged her expressions, her posture, the tone of her voice. He searched for cracks in her certainty. There had to be doubt somewhere. She acted normal, friendly, the same easy rhythm as always. But now every smile felt like a challenge. Did she really think things could go back to how they were? Did she think he could simply shrink again? He smiled back when she spoke, helped with dishes, took the dog out. He performed normalcy with surgical precision. Inside, his thoughts churned. He began to notice details he'd ignored before. The way she laughed with other people, the warmth in her voice when she talked on the phone, the life she lived that did not include him at the center. Each detail felt like a quiet insult. His chest tightened every time her phone buzzed. Who was that? Who deserved her attention more than he did? The questions looped endlessly, and with each loop, the crack inside him widened. Days passed. He started changing things. Small things at first. A new shirt, younger style. Something she once mentioned looked good on someone. He wore it casually, waiting for her to notice. She did. A simple compliment, friendly, light. It hit him like fuel, proof. He leaned into it. Soon came the tattoo, a sharp, burning needle carving ink into skin while he imagined her reaction. He pictured admiration in her eyes, surprise, a shift in how she saw him. He walked into the apartment later that day with his arm exposed, pulse humming with anticipation. She looked. She smiled. Said it was cool. Nothing more. The excitement drained out of him so fast it left him dizzy. Cool? That was all? He nodded, pretending satisfaction. But inside, frustration tightened like a wire. He needed more. He began reshaping himself obsessively. Hair, clothes, posture. He studied younger men like blueprints. He spent money he didn't have chasing a version of himself that felt closer to her world. Each change felt like a step toward inevitability. And every time she treated him the same, warm, friendly, distant, the wire pulled tighter. His thoughts grew sharper. Why wasn't it working? He had done everything right. He had improved, adapted, sacrificed. Yet she still stood just out of reach, smiling like nothing had changed. The crack inside him splintered further. The apartment began to feel hostile, not outwardly. Nothing visible had shifted. But to Kwang, the walls leaned inward. The air pressed against his skin. Every shared space became a reminder of rejection. He started staying in his room longer, listening. He memorized the rhythm of her life through thin walls, footsteps, drawers opening, the murmur of her voice on the phone. Sometimes he pressed his ear against the door without realizing he'd moved. Her laughter filtered through like a blade. He imagined her laughing at him. The thought took root quickly. He pictured her telling friends about the confession, smiling, shaking her head. Poor guy. The image burned. His breathing grew shallow, his hands curled into fists. Humiliation transformed into anger with terrifying ease. And anger felt good. It felt solid, justified. It told him he wasn't small. It told him he was wronged. The story rewrote itself in his mind. He wasn't rejected. He was betrayed. The distinction mattered because betrayal demanded balance. One evening, he watched her through the reflection of the microwave door while she heated leftovers. The distorted image warped her face into something unfamiliar, a stranger wearing her skin. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. The feeling unsettled him. He blinked, and the reflection snapped back to normal. But the unease lingered. He began noticing distortions everywhere. Shadows stretching too long, reflections lagging a half-second behind movement, his mind buzzing with a low, constant hum. Sleep became thin and broken, his dreams filled with scenes where she reached for him, only to vanish when he touched her. He woke each time with his heart hammering, the room feeling wrong, like reality had shifted slightly while he slept. He started to dread silence. Silence meant thinking, and thinking meant spiraling into the same loop. She owes me. The thought arrived uninvited. He tried to dismiss it. It returned stronger. She owes me for what he had given, for what he had become, for what he had sacrificed trying to be enough. The logic felt airtight. His anger crystallized into certainty, and certainty is dangerous when it grows inside a fractured mind. One night, he stood in the hallway outside her door. He didn't remember leaving his room. His hand hovered inches from the knob. The apartment was dark, quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the slow rhythm of her breathing beyond the door. He felt pulled forward by something he didn't want to name. Not violence. Not yet. Just proximity. Proof she was real. Proof she existed in a world that kept denying him. His fingertips brushed the cool metal. A shock ran through him. He froze. For a split second, he imagined opening the door, imagined stepping inside, imagined her waking to see him standing there. The image filled him with a strange mix of fear and power. His chest tightened, the crack inside him yawned open, and he stepped back, retreated to his room, sat on the edge of his bed shaking. He told himself it was nothing, just stress, just confusion. But deep down, he understood something had crossed a line, a quiet one, invisible, irreversible. He lay back, staring into darkness that felt thicker than before. The apartment no longer felt like a shared space. It felt like a stage, and something inside him was preparing for a final act. After the hallway incident, Kwang told himself he would calm down. He even believed it for a few hours. Morning came with ordinary light, the kind that should have washed everything clean. The apartment smelled like coffee. The dog scratched softly at the floor. Maribel moved through the kitchen with her usual rhythm. Alive, unaware, normal. The sight of her steadiness irritated him. How could she be so calm when his thoughts were tearing themselves apart? He watched her from the corner of his eye while pretending to scroll on his phone. Every movement she made felt intentional, like she was performing normal life just to mock him. The scrape of a chair, the clink of a mug, the soft hum in her throat. Each sound tapped against his nerves. He imagined she could feel his gaze, that she was pretending not to notice, that she enjoyed the tension. The thought made his jaw tighten. He looked away first. The money issue began quietly. He had been dipping into his savings for weeks. Clothes, the tattoo, little upgrades that felt necessary at the time. Now the numbers in his account looked thin, fragile. Rent approached like a deadline with teeth. He stared at the payment screen longer than usual. His finger hovered. He imagined handing over the money and feeling that familiar sting, the sense of investing in a space that wasn't really his, a space she controlled. The thought soured his mood instantly. Why should he rush to pay when she clearly didn't value what he brought into her life? He had given effort, transformation, dedication, and she responded with polite distance. The balance felt wrong. He closed the app. Just this once, he told himself. He would handle it later. Days passed. He didn't pay. The silence around the issue felt heavy. He expected confrontation immediately. A knock on his door, her voice tight with frustration. It didn't come. That unsettled him more. He started noticing her glancing at the counter where rent receipts usually sat. A flicker of confusion crossed her face each time. She said nothing, but the tension crept into the apartment like humidity before a storm. He told himself she was being passive-aggressive, waiting, testing him. Every imagined intention sharpened his resentment. When she finally brought it up, her voice was careful. She stood near the doorway of his room, arms loose at her sides, not defensive, not accusatory, just practical. Rent was late. She needed his half. The words hit him wrong, not because of what she said, but because of how normal she sounded. Like this was just a simple transaction, like nothing complicated lay beneath it. He heard accusation anyway. He heard judgment. His chest tightened. He told her he was handling it, that she didn't need to worry. His tone carried an edge he didn't intend, but didn't correct. She nodded slowly, sensing something off. The conversation ended there, but the air didn't settle. That night, the apartment felt thick with pressure. He sat in his room listening to the faint sounds of her moving around. Each footstep felt deliberate. Each drawer closing sounded louder than it should. His thoughts began spinning. She thinks I'm irresponsible. She's judging me. After everything. The narrative built itself brick by brick. He pictured her telling friends about him, the older roommate who couldn't even pay rent on time. He imagined their laughter, their pity. His hands curled into fists, heat crawled up his neck. The pressure inside him needed release. He stood abruptly and paced his room. The walls felt closer than usual. His breathing came fast, shallow. He wanted to knock on her door, demand acknowledgement. force her to understand the imbalance he felt. Instead, he opened his laptop. He stared at the empty screen until words began to pour out. Angry notes, half-formed accusations, lists of sacrifices he believed he had made. He typed until his fingers ached. Then he read it back. Even to him, it sounded unhinged. He deleted everything, but the emotion remained. The next day, Maribel confronted him again. This time there was no doorway distance. She stood in the living room, arms crossed loosely, trying to keep things calm. The dog hovered near her legs, sensing tension. Her words were firmer now. Rent needed to be paid. She couldn't keep covering both halves. Something inside Kwong snapped tight. He heard disrespect in every syllable. The crack inside him splintered wider. He raised his voice without realizing it. Words spilled out, sharp and defensive. He accused her of pressuring him, of being unfair, of treating him like a burden. Her expression shifted from confusion to alarm. She hadn't expected this reaction. He saw it. The moment she stepped back slightly, the moment caution entered her posture, it enraged him. He took a step forward. The room seemed to tilt. The dog barked sharply. Maribel's voice grew louder, steadier. She told him to calm down, that this wasn't necessary, that they could figure it out like adults. But he wasn't hearing her anymore. His pulse thundered in his ears. The edges of the room blurred. Her face looked distant, distorted, like he was seeing her through warped glass. Every frustration of the past months surged at once. Rejection, humiliation, resentment. It all found a single outlet. He shouted. The sound ripped out of him raw and ugly. Words he barely registered spilled into the air. Accusations, bitterness, rage he didn't know he'd been storing. Maribel's eyes hardened, and something changed. The warmth she'd always shown him vanished. In its place stood a boundary. She told him they were done being friends. The sentence landed with finality. No hesitation, no softness, just truth. Then came the second blow. He had until the end of the month to move out. The silence afterward was worse than the shouting. He stood frozen, her words echoing in his skull. The apartment felt suddenly unfamiliar, like the walls had shifted positions when he wasn't looking. Move out. The phrase repeated endlessly. This wasn't just eviction, it was erasure. She was removing him from her life like an inconvenience, like he had never mattered. The humiliation was suffocating. He watched her walk away, her shoulders tight with lingering adrenaline. The dog followed her. The bedroom door clicked shut. The sound felt final. He stood alone in the living room, breathing hard. The crack inside him wasn't a crack anymore. It was a break. Something fell through it, and what rose up in its place felt cold, focused. He sat slowly on the couch, staring at the door she'd disappeared behind. His thoughts didn't spiral now. They aligned. She had chosen this. She had forced his hand. The narrative settled into place with terrifying clarity. He wasn't the aggressor. He was the one being pushed, cornered. And cornered things reacted. That night, he didn't sleep. He lay in the dark, listening to her movements behind the wall, every shift of the mattress, every breath, every turn. Proof she was still there, proof she had power over his fate. His jaw clenched. The idea of leaving, of packing his life into suitcases again, felt unbearable. Another reset, another shrinking, another hallway of closed doors. He imagined her relief when he was gone. The thought ignited something sharp inside his chest. No. That wasn't how this would end. His breathing slowed, his thoughts grew still. A quiet decision began forming, not fully shaped, not yet violent, but heavy with implication. He didn't name it. He didn't need to. He only knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not be the one erased. And in the darkness of the apartment, as the walls pressed in and the night stretched long, that certainty rooted itself deep, growing, waiting. The apartment woke up tense, not loud, not dramatic, just tight. Kwong could feel it the moment his eyes opened. The air itself felt heavier, like something invisible was pressing down on his chest. He lay still, listening. The hum of the refrigerator, pipes clicking faintly, the distant rush of traffic, and beneath it all, silence from her room. He checked the clock, later than usual. For a moment, a strange fear gripped him. Had she left? Packed up in the night? Escaped him somehow? His heart jumped. Then he heard movement, the creak of her bed, soft footsteps. Relief washed through him, followed immediately by irritation that he'd felt relief at all. She was still here. Good. The thought settled in his stomach with uncomfortable weight. They did not speak that morning. Maribel moved through the kitchen quickly, efficiently, avoiding eye contact. Her posture was different now, guarded, not fearful, but cautious in the way someone is when they've touched a hot surface once and remember the burn. She no longer treated him like a friend, she treated him like a problem. He noticed every detail. The way she positioned her body slightly sideways when passing him, keeping distance. The way her eyes flicked toward his hands, then away. The speed in her movements, like she wanted the interaction over as soon as possible. Each observation scraped at his nerves. He wanted to tell her she was overreacting, that he wasn't dangerous, that she was the one escalating things. But he said nothing. He simply watched, and inside, resentment continued to harden into something structured, something with edges. The first outside voice came that afternoon. He heard her on the phone in the living room, her voice low but urgent. He couldn't make out every word, but fragments slipped through the thin barrier of his door. Not comfortable. He yelled, I just want him gone. His jaw tightened. She was telling people, painting him as unstable. The narrative in his mind snapped into place instantly. She was recruiting allies, building a case, turning him into the villain before he even had a chance to defend himself. He stepped closer to the door without realizing it. Her voice softened, then hardened again. I'll handle it. The call ended. Silence followed. Thick, humming silence. He stepped back slowly, heart pounding. The apartment felt like a stage where everyone but him had read the script. He hated that feeling. Evening arrived with a knock on the front door. Sharp, unexpected. Kwong froze in his room. Another knock. Then a voice, male, firm, edged with irritation. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone alone made his stomach twist. He moved toward the door quietly, stopping just short of opening it. Through the thin wood, he heard Maribel speak. Her voice was tight but controlled. The man responded louder this time. A name slipped through. Paul. The syllable burned. Kwong pictured him instantly. Bigger, younger, confident. The kind of man who stepped into situations believing he owned them. The kind of man who thought intimidation solved problems. The voice rose again, unmistakably directed at him now. Move out. Tomorrow. The words struck like blunt objects. Kwong's chest tightened. Heat crawled up his neck. He opened the door. Paul stood in the living room, arms crossed, jaw set. He didn't look surprised to see Kwong. He looked ready. The air between them thickened. Paul spoke slowly, deliberately, each word a warning. He wasn't asking. He was telling. By tomorrow, Kwong needed to be gone. No more excuses. No more delays. Maribel stood a few steps behind, eyes flicking between them. Kwong felt cornered. Every instinct screamed to push back, to assert control, to refuse. But something colder rose instead. He nodded. Once. No argument, no raised voice. The calm surprised everyone, including him. Paul studied his face for a long second, like he was searching for a hidden spark. Finding none, he gave a final warning look and stepped toward the door. The lock clicked behind him. Silence flooded the apartment. Maribel didn't speak. She retreated to her room, closing the door gently. The sound echoed. Kwong stood alone in the living room, breathing slow, too slow. Inside, something had gone very still. The humiliation settled deep, not hot and explosive like before, but cold, dense, heavy. He replayed the scene again and again, Paul's tone, Maribel's watchful silence, the implication that he needed supervision, enforcement, like he couldn't be trusted to act like a person. The narrative sharpened. They were pushing him out, erasing him, treating him like something disposable. His fingers curled slowly at his sides. He imagined packing his belongings under their watchful eyes. Imagined Paul standing there, arms crossed, making sure he didn't try anything. The thought filled him with a deep, crawling anger. Not loud, not chaotic, controlled. He sat down on the couch, staring at the blank television screen. His reflection looked back at him, older, tired, jaw clenched. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself. The man in the screen looked hollow, and behind that hollow gaze, something patient waited. Night came quietly. Maribel locked her door. He heard the click, a small sound that carried enormous meaning. She was afraid. The realization stirred something complicated inside him. Part of him felt insulted. Another part felt powerful. He walked the apartment slowly, barefoot, listening to the familiar creaks. Every shadow felt thicker tonight. The corners of rooms seemed to swallow light. He stood outside her door, not touching it, just standing there. He imagined her inside, lying awake, listening for his footsteps. Imagined her breath held tight. Imagined fear stretching the seconds into hours. The thought sent a strange calm through him. For the first time in days, his mind felt clear. They thought they controlled the timeline. Tomorrow, move out, end of story. He almost smiled. Tomorrow was just a word, a suggestion, not a guarantee. His breathing slowed, his thoughts aligned into a simple, terrible shape. He stepped back from the door. The apartment returned to silence. But the silence felt different now, charged, waiting, like the air before lightning. Kwang returned to his room and sat on the edge of his bed. He stared at the wall until shapes began to form in the shadows. Faces, movements, possibilities. His heartbeat matched a steady rhythm in his head. Not panic, not doubt. Decision. He lay back, eyes open in the dark, and somewhere in the apartment, pipes ticked softly, counting down to a morning that would not unfold the way anyone expected. The apartment felt like it was holding its breath. Kwang woke sometime after midnight without knowing why. His eyes opened into darkness that felt thick and close, like the room had shrunk while he slept. For a few seconds he lay perfectly still, listening. Nothing. No traffic outside, no pipes ticking, no distant voices. Just silence so complete it felt intentional. His heartbeat filled the space. Slow. Heavy. Certain. He didn't feel groggy. He didn't feel confused. He felt awake in a way that went deeper than sleep. Like his body had been waiting for this moment and finally received permission to move. He sat up. The air was cool against his skin. He swung his feet to the floor and stood without turning on the light. The darkness didn't bother him. He knew the shape of the room, the exact distance to the door, the soft spot in the floor that creaked if stepped on wrong. He avoided it. The hallway greeted him with shadows layered on shadows. The faint glow from the street slipped through the blinds, carving thin lines across the floor. He listened again. There it was. Her breathing. Soft, distant, steady. Proof. His chest tightened, not with panic, not with rage, but with a focused awareness that narrowed the world into simple points: the door, the sound, the space between. He stepped forward. Each movement felt deliberate, like walking underwater. The hallway stretched longer than usual. The walls seemed to lean inward, watching. His thoughts were strangely quiet. No arguments, no justifications, just a steady pull forward. When he reached her door, he stopped. The handle glinted faintly in the dark. He stared at it, waiting for some surge of doubt or fear. None came. Instead, a memory flickered. Paul's voice, firm and final. Tomorrow. The word felt distant, meaningless. This was the moment that existed, nothing else. His fingers closed around the knob. Cold metal. He turned it slowly. The latch clicked. Soft, precise. He froze. Her breathing hitched inside the room, then settled. Still asleep. He pushed the door open just enough to slip through. Her room smelled faintly of detergent and something floral. The window cast a pale wash of moonlight across the bed. She lay on her side, hair spilled across the pillow, one arm tucked beneath her cheek. Ordinary. Peaceful. Alive in a way that felt unfair to him. He stood in the doorway longer than he meant to. His eyes adjusted to the dim light. He noticed details, the slow rise and fall of her shoulders, the soft crease in the blanket, the quiet rhythm of sleep. For a moment he saw her as she was. Not an enemy, not a symbol, just a person. The moment wavered. Something inside him trembled. This was the last chance to turn back. The thought passed through him like wind through an empty hallway. And kept going. He stepped closer. The floor whispered under his weight. She stirred slightly, her brow tightening before smoothing again. He crouched beside the bed. Up close he could hear every breath, feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin. The intimacy of it felt invasive, electric. His hands hovered. He didn't rush. He let the seconds stretch, let the decision settle fully into his muscles, into his bones. His thoughts did not scream. They aligned, a single, cold certainty. This ends tonight. His hands moved. The world narrowed to sensation, fabric shifting, a sudden intake of breath, movement, sharp, confused. Her eyes opened into darkness and panic, a body waking too fast, instinct fighting for understanding. The struggle was chaotic but brief. The room filled with muffled sounds, not loud, not dramatic, just raw survival colliding with force. Her hands pushed against him, nails scraped, legs kicked beneath the blanket. The bed frame thudded softly against the wall. He held on, his jaw clenched, his vision tunneled. Time warped. Seconds stretched into something shapeless. Her movements weakened, slowed, stuttered. The air felt heavy, wet, wrong. And then, stillness. A terrible, absolute stillness. The kind that doesn't belong in a living room. His grip loosened, the silence roared. He stayed frozen, hands trembling, breath coming in shallow bursts. The room felt tilted, like gravity had shifted. His ears rang. He waited for her to move, to breathe, to exist again. Nothing happened. The truth settled slowly, like dust. He stood. His legs felt distant, unreliable. He stepped back from the bed, staring at the shape beneath the blanket. It didn't look real. It looked like a paused image. He half expected the scene to snap back, for her to gasp, to shout, to undo what had just happened. The room remained silent. The night did not rewind. The next minutes unfolded in a blur of instinct. He didn't think in words, he acted in motions. Blanket adjusted, room checked, door opened, hallway empty. Every sound felt magnified. The faint creak of the floor, his own breathing, the soft rustle of fabric. The apartment felt enormous now, full of corners watching. He moved with mechanical focus, driven by a need to erase evidence of the moment. His hands worked without hesitation. His eyes avoided the bed as much as possible. When he finally stepped back, the room looked almost unchanged. Almost. But the air had shifted. Heavy. Permanent. He turned off the light he hadn't realized he'd switched on. Darkness swallowed the space. He closed the door. The click echoed through his skull. Back in his room, he sat on the edge of the bed. His hands shook. Not from panic, from adrenaline draining out of him like water through cracked glass. His mind began to fill again, thoughts rushing in now that the act was over. What have I done? The question felt distant, abstract, like it belonged to someone else. He stood and washed his hands in the bathroom sink. The water ran cold. He scrubbed longer than necessary, staring at his reflection. The man in the mirror looked pale, eyes wide, older, but calm, too calm. He dried his hands slowly. The apartment hummed with the same silence as before, but it felt different now. Not waiting. Finished. He returned to his room and lay down fully clothed. His heart still beat hard, but his thoughts drifted in strange directions. Logistics, timelines, next steps. Morning would come. People would ask questions. He would need a story. But for now, the apartment remained perfectly still, and in that stillness, Kwong stared at the ceiling and felt something hollow open inside him, a space where panic should have lived. It did not fill, it simply echoed. Morning did not arrive gently. It slid into the apartment like nothing had happened. Sunlight crept through the blinds, birds argued outside, a car door slammed somewhere in the distance. The world resumed its ordinary rhythm, indifferent to the stillness inside her room. Kwong opened his eyes already awake. For a moment, he forgot. Then memory returned, not as panic, not as horror, but as a flat, heavy fact. His chest tightened once, then steadied. He sat up slowly, listening. The apartment felt wrong, not loud wrong, not chaotic, just empty in a way that pressed against his ears. He realized what was missing. Her footsteps, the familiar morning sounds that used to bleed through the walls. Nothing replaced them. He stood. His body felt distant, like he was operating it from a step behind his own eyes. Each movement was careful, measured. He stepped into the hallway and stopped. Her door stood closed. A quiet promise. He stared at it longer than he meant to. His mind tried to imagine what lay beyond. The shape of the bed, the frozen air, the silence that did not belong to sleep. He looked away first. There were things to do. He moved through the apartment in a slow loop, touching objects as if confirming they were still real. The counter, the back of a chair, the cool surface of the sink. Everything looked normal. That offended him. Normal felt like a lie. He washed his face and watched water spiral down the drain. His reflection stared back, pale, eyes ringed dark, jaw tight. He waited for guilt to rise, for fear, for anything. What he felt instead was pressure, a practical weight settling onto his thoughts. You need to fix this. The sentence arrived fully formed. He nodded once to his reflection. Yes, fix it. He opened her door mid-morning. The smell hit first, not decay, not yet, but a stagnant warmth, air that had stopped moving. The room looked exactly as he left it. Curtains half drawn, sunlight slicing across the floor. The bed, he forced himself to look. The shape beneath the blanket remained still. Final. His heartbeat thudded once, heavy. He stepped inside. Every sound felt amplified, fabric shifting, floor whispering beneath his weight. He moved carefully, avoiding unnecessary noise even though no one was there to hear. The silence inside the room was different from the rest of the apartment. Denser, like the air itself understood. He stood beside the bed and waited again, a useless instinct, hoping for reversal, for motion, for proof this could still be undone. Nothing changed. The reality settled deeper. He reached down with mechanical precision and adjusted the blanket, wrapping and folding with hands that felt numb. He avoided looking at her face. He focused on corners, edges, the task itself. Work. That was all this was now. Getting her out of the apartment felt like dragging a shadow. The hallway seemed longer than it had ever been. The walls leaned inward. Every creak sounded like an alarm. He paused after each step, listening for footsteps, voices, anything. Nothing came. The building felt abandoned. Outside, the sunlight was too bright. It made him squint. The normalcy of the day, distant laughter, a passing car, wind through trees, clashed violently with what he carried. The contrast made his stomach twist. He moved quickly. His car sat where he left it, quiet and waiting. The trunk opened with a soft click that echoed too loudly in his head. He didn't hesitate. When the trunk closed, the sound felt final in a way that rattled his teeth. He stood there a moment, breathing hard. The world continued around him. No one noticed. No one cared. The realization steadied him. He got in the car. The drive blurred. Streets folded into highways. Traffic lights changed without meaning. His hands stayed locked on the wheel, knuckles pale. His thoughts tunneled toward a single goal: distance. He needed somewhere quiet, somewhere forgotten. The canyon came to him not as a plan, but as memory, a place he'd passed once, barely noticed, a stretch of land that felt untouched, the kind of place people didn't linger. Perfect. He turned without signaling. The road narrowed. Pavement gave way to rough gravel. Trees thickened, swallowing sound. The air changed, cooler, heavier, carrying the scent of dry earth. He parked where the brush grew dense. For a long moment, he sat there listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to drive until the memory itself thinned. But the pressure inside him held firm. Finish it. He stepped out. The canyon felt ancient. Wind whispered through leaves like distant voices. The ground was uneven, littered with rocks and brittle branches. Each step crunched loudly beneath his shoes. He hated the noise. The trunk opened again. The air shifted. He worked quickly, movements jerky now. The forest pressed in on all sides, watching. Every shadow felt alive. Every rustle made his head snap toward the sound. Nothing approached. Still, his pulse hammered. He chose a spot near a crooked tree, a marker he could remember, though he wasn't sure why that mattered. The soil was dry and stubborn. He dug with frantic efficiency, breath coming sharp, time lost shape, sweat stung his eyes, dirt packed beneath his nails. The hole deepened inch by inch. When it was enough, he stopped. The silence around him roared. He didn't allow himself to think. He finished the work, covered the ground, pressed soil flat with trembling hands. The earth accepted everything without protest. When he stepped back, the spot looked ordinary. Just another patch of canyon floor. The simplicity of it made his chest tighten. All that chaos, hidden under dirt. The world did not change. Birds continued their distant chatter, wind slid through branches, sunlight flickered across leaves. The canyon kept its secret. For now. The drive back felt longer. His hands shook intermittently on the wheel. Every passing car felt suspicious. Every glance from another driver felt loaded with knowledge. They know. The thought crawled in uninvited. He swallowed hard and kept his eyes forward. No sirens followed, no flashing lights, just traffic. Normal. The apartment greeted him with the same heavy silence as before. He stepped inside and closed the door gently, listening to the click echo. The space felt hollow, clean, wrong. He walked into the living room and stood there, unsure what to do with his hands, his body, the leftover adrenaline. The absence pressed in from every direction. He expected relief. Instead, unease seeped into the cracks. The canyon was miles away, but it felt close, like the earth itself was breathing beneath the floorboards. He imagined dirt shifting, imagined something rising. His stomach tightened. He shook the thought away. It was done, hidden, finished. He repeated the words silently until they lost meaning. Still, the apartment did not feel lighter. It felt like it was waiting. That night, sleep came in broken fragments. Every sound jerked him awake, the refrigerator humming, a pipe clicking, wind brushing the window. Each noise carried a whisper of accusation. He dreamed of dirt, endless dirt pressing against his chest, filling his mouth, clogging his lungs. He woke gasping, hands clawing at the sheets. The room was dark, empty. But the smell of earth lingered in his nose. He lay there, heart racing, listening to the silence stretch. Somewhere far away, a dog barked. The canyon flashed in his mind. That crooked tree, the flattened soil. He imagined footsteps approaching it, imagined hands digging. The thought would not leave. He stared into the darkness until dawn began to gray the edges of the room. And in that thin morning light, Kwang realized something cold and undeniable. Burying the act had not buried the fear. It had only planted it, and now it was growing. The first knock did not sound real. Kwang heard it while standing at the sink, staring at water spilling over his hands. It was soft, distant, the kind of knock that could easily be mistaken for a pipe settling or a neighbor closing a door. He froze. Water ran cold over his skin. Another knock came, sharper this time. Real. His stomach tightened. He shut off the faucet slowly, listening. The apartment suddenly felt thin, like its walls were made of paper. Someone knocked again, 3 times, measured. Official. His heartbeat climbed into his throat. They found her. The thought arrived fully formed, absolute. His mind raced through impossible scenarios. Dirt overturned, footprints discovered, someone watching him from the canyon. Every fear he buried rose all at once. He forced himself to breathe, walk, act normal. He moved toward the door, each step heavy. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out everything else. When he opened the door, sunlight stabbed into his eyes. 2 police officers stood in the corridor, smiling, polite, but their presence filled the doorway like a wall. Kwang felt his spine lock. They asked about Maribel. Her name hit him like a physical blow. He blinked too slowly. They explained her family hadn't heard from her. She missed calls, missed plans. It wasn't like her, concerned, just concerned. Their voices were calm, casual, routine. But Kwang heard accusation in every syllable. He felt sweat gathering beneath his shirt. He told them she'd gone out, maybe with friends. He wasn't sure. The lies slid out smoothly, practiced without rehearsal. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. The officers nodded, writing something down. Their pens scratched softly against paper. The sound burrowed into his skull. One officer glanced past him into the apartment. Kwang resisted the urge to block the doorway. Nothing to see, nothing wrong. The officer thanked him, said they'd follow up if needed. Then they left. Their footsteps faded down the hall. Kwang closed the door carefully. The click echoed. His knees nearly gave out. The apartment changed after that. Every shadow felt occupied. Every quiet moment hummed with invisible tension. He paced. The officers' questions replayed endlessly in his mind. Their tone, their expressions, the way they looked at him or didn't look. Did they suspect him? Were they pretending not to? His thoughts spiraled into endless loops. They know. They don't know. They know. He checked the locks twice. Then again. He stood in the living room listening to nothing, convinced he could hear whispers beneath the silence. The apartment no longer felt empty. It felt watched. Her absence grew louder. Objects she left behind seemed to pulse with accusation. A jacket draped over a chair, a mug in the sink, shoes by the door. Proof she should still be here. Each item felt like evidence waiting to speak. He moved the jacket, then put it back exactly where it was. He washed the mug, then panicked and placed it beside the sink, trying to recreate the original position. He stood there breathing hard. This is wrong. Everything felt wrong. The apartment no longer belonged to the living. It belonged to what had happened. The phone started buzzing more often. Unknown numbers. He stared at the screen until it stopped vibrating. Each missed call felt like a ticking clock. He imagined officers tracing signals, tracking movement, closing in. He turned the phone face down. It buzzed again. His chest tightened. He powered it off. The silence that followed was worse. Now he couldn't hear the threat approaching. He sat on the couch, hands pressed to his temples, trying to slow the noise inside his head. It didn't slow. It multiplied. That night, the apartment refused to sleep. Every creak snapped his eyes open. Every whisper of wind against the window sounded like someone breathing just outside. He lay frozen, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the darkness, he heard movement. Soft, dragging. He sat up, heart slamming against his ribs. The hallway was empty, but the sound lingered in his ears, the memory of something being pulled across a floor. He stumbled to the bathroom and splashed water on his face. His reflection looked worse than before, eyes bloodshot, skin pale. He leaned closer. For a split second, the face in the mirror looked unfamiliar, mouth slightly open, eyes too wide, expression twisted by fear. He jerked back. The reflection snapped into place. Just him. Just stress. He told himself that over and over. It didn't stick. The next morning brought more noise, voices in the hallway, footsteps stopping outside his door. He held his breath. A knock. Not the same knock as before. This one was hesitant. Human. He opened the door to find one of Maribel's neighbors. Her face was tight with worry. She asked if he'd seen her, if he knew where she might be. Her eyes searched his face. Looking for truth, he felt sweat beat at his temples. He shook his head. No idea. The lie tasted metallic. She thanked him and left. Her footsteps retreated slowly. He closed the door and leaned against it, lungs burning. They were asking everyone now. The search was expanding, closing in. By evening, the apartment felt smaller. The walls pressed inward. The air thickened. Every sound carried intention. He couldn't sit still. He paced until his legs trembled. His thoughts spiraled back to the canyon, to the crooked tree, the flattened earth. He imagined the soil shifting. Imagined animals digging. Imagined hands pulling away dirt. The image would not leave. He grabbed his keys without realizing he'd decided to move. The drive happened in fragments. Streetlights streaked past. His breath came short and sharp. He needed to check. Just to make sure. Just to see. The canyon greeted him with the same whispering wind, the same indifferent silence. He stepped out of the car, heart hammering. The ground looked untouched. Perfectly still. Relief flooded him so hard his knees weakened. It's fine. It's hidden. No one knows. He stood there longer than necessary, staring at the patch of earth, waiting for it to betray him. It didn't. The canyon kept its secret. For now. But as he turned back toward the car, a new thought crept in, colder than the rest. Secrets don't stay buried. They wait. That night, sleep never came. Kwong lay in the dark, listening to the apartment breathe. The silence pulsed with unseen pressure. Every second stretched thin. He stared at the ceiling until his eyes burned, and in that endless dark, he understood something that settled deep in his bones. The world was moving. The search was growing, and the quiet he was clinging to was running out. By the third day, the world started saying her name out loud. Kwong heard it before he even left the apartment. The television in a neighbor's unit bled sound through the wall, muffled voices, a news anchor speaking with that careful tone reserved for tragedy. He couldn't make out every word, but one name slipped through clearly. Maribel. His stomach dropped. He stood frozen in the kitchen, cereal spoons suspended halfway to his mouth. The air felt suddenly thin. He strained to hear more, but the words blurred into static and distant concern. Missing. Family worried. Community searching. The spoon clattered into the bowl, too loud. He stared at the milk rippling like it had been disturbed by something bigger than gravity. They were talking about her, out loud, to everyone. The apartment felt exposed. He turned on his own television with shaking hands. Her face filled the screen almost immediately. A photo he recognized, bright smile, eyes alive, caught in a moment that now felt impossible. The banner beneath read her name in bold letters, words scrolled underneath like a quiet accusation. Missing. The anchor spoke gently, explaining the timeline. Last seen at home, family concerned, police investigating. Kwong's chest tightened. The room tilted slightly. Seeing her face there, preserved in pixels, untouched by what he knew, made his thoughts stumble. She looked so present, so alive, like she might step off the screen and walk back into the apartment. He imagined hearing her keys in the door. The thought hit so hard he turned off the TV. Silence flooded in, but her image stayed burned into his mind. Watching. The outside world began creeping closer. Flyers appeared in the hallway by afternoon. He saw them when he opened the door, taped crookedly to the wall. Her face again, the same bright smile, the same impossible aliveness. He stepped closer. The paper trembled in his hand as he pulled it free. Have you seen her? The question felt personal. He stared at the photo until his vision blurred. The hallway seemed to narrow. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead like an insect trapped in glass. He imagined neighbors walking past, glancing at the flyer, then at him, comparing, wondering. He shoved the paper into his pocket and closed the door too quickly. The click echoed. Inside, the apartment felt smaller. Crowded, his phone buzzed relentlessly. Group messages, alerts, social media posts flooding local feeds. Her face everywhere. Each notification felt like a tap on his shoulder. We're looking. We're watching. He tried to ignore it. He couldn't. He opened one post. Hundreds of comments, prayers, speculation, anger already bubbling beneath the surface. Someone mentioned the roommate. His pulse spiked. The roommate should be questioned. He dropped the phone like it burned him. The device clattered against the floor. He stared at it, breathing hard. They were circling. Not with proof, but with suspicion. And suspicion was loud. The apartment no longer felt private. Every sound carried intention. Footsteps in the hallway made him flinch. Voices outside felt too close, too sharp. He kept expecting another knock. He rehearsed answers in his head. Calm, believable, harmless. Each version sounded wrong the moment he imagined speaking it. He paced until his legs ached. The walls seemed to inch inward. He caught himself staring at her door again. It remained closed. He hadn't opened it since that morning. Didn't want to. Couldn't. Yet its presence pulled at him, a reminder, a silent witness. He looked away. Evening brought new noise. A candlelight vigil announced on the news. Her family organizing it. The location flashed briefly across the screen, a park not far from the canyon. His breath caught. Too close. His mind jumped instantly to dirt, to that crooked tree, to the fragile secrecy of the ground. He imagined dozens of people walking nearby, candles glowing, feet wandering, curiosity pulling someone just a little farther than planned. His chest tightened painfully. They'll find it. The thought pulsed like a drumbeat. He tried to reason with himself. The canyon was wide. The spot was hidden. No one would. The certainty didn't hold. Fear gnawed through logic with ease. He turned off the television again. Silence didn't help. Now the vigil lived in his head. Night settled thick and restless. He couldn't sit still. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like movement. He kept glancing at the clock, watching minutes crawl. His thoughts circled one idea relentlessly. Check the canyon. Just once. Make sure. The urge built until it felt physical. A pressure behind his ribs. Ignoring it felt impossible. He grabbed his keys. The drive blurred again, lights smearing across his vision. His hands trembled on the wheel. The canyon welcomed him with the same whispering wind. He stepped out slowly, listening. Nothing. Just night breathing. He moved toward the crooked tree with careful steps. The ground looked unchanged, flat, silent. He crouched, brushing dirt with trembling fingers. Solid, undisturbed. Relief flooded him, sharp and dizzying. Still hidden, still safe. But as he stood, the wind shifted. Leaves rustled in a way that sounded almost like voices. He turned too fast, heart hammering. Nothing stood behind him, just darkness. Watching. He backed toward the car without turning his back on the spot. The canyon kept its secret. But it felt aware. Back at the apartment, sleep refused him again. He lay in the dark listening to the hum of the building. The vigil played in his mind, candles flickering, voices murmuring her name. He imagined standing among them, pretending grief. The idea made his stomach twist. But another thought followed, colder and clearer. If you don't show up, they'll notice. His chest tightened. Participation meant proximity. Absence meant suspicion. Either way, eyes were turning toward him. He stared into the darkness until shapes formed in the corners of the room, flickering illusions born of exhaustion. And as the night stretched thin, one realization settled heavy in his bones. The search was no longer quiet. It was loud, public, and every voice calling her name felt like it was closing the distance between the canyon and him. The vigil lit the park like a wound that refused to close. Kwong stood at the edge of it, half hidden behind a line of trees. He hadn't meant to come this close. The plan had been simple. Drive by, confirm it was contained, leave. But curiosity pulled harder than fear. Candles flickered in hundreds of hands. Their glow trembled in the night, small flames fighting darkness. The crowd murmured her name in soft waves, grief passing from person to person like shared breath. Maribel. Hearing it spoken aloud again and again felt like pressure inside his skull. He stayed where the shadows thickened, watching faces twist with worry, sorrow, anger. Her family stood near the center, clinging to one another. Their pain was raw, unfiltered. It didn't look like television grief. It was heavier, real. And it made something inside him recoil. He turned away too quickly. The candlelight lingered in his vision, ghost bright even after he faced the dark. He walked back to the car with careful steps, telling himself the same thing over and over. You're invisible. You're fine. But the words sounded thin. The next morning, the apartment complex buzzed with restless energy. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones in the hallway. Doors opened and closed more often than usual. The air felt charged, like a storm was waiting to break. Kwong opened his door to find two police officers standing outside her apartment. His breath stalled. They spoke quietly with a woman from down the hall, taking notes. One officer glanced up, meeting Kwong's eyes for half a second. Too long. Recognition sparked in his chest, sharp and electric. He nodded awkwardly and shut his door. Too fast. The lock clicked like a gunshot. He stood frozen, listening. Footsteps approached. A knock. His heart slammed into his ribs. He wiped his palms on his pants before opening the door. The officers stood there, polite, unreadable, routine questions. When did you last see her? Had she mentioned travel plans? Anything unusual? His voice felt distant as he answered. Calm, measured. The words slid out smoothly, almost detached from him. He even managed a concerned frown. They thanked him, moved on. The door closed, his knees nearly gave out. He slid down against the wall, breathing in short, shallow bursts. They knew nothing. Nothing. But their presence had cracked something inside him. The investigation wasn't abstract anymore. It was standing at his door. That night, the apartment refused to stay quiet. The refrigerator hummed too loudly. Pipes groaned like distant voices. The building seemed alive with whispers. Kwong sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. His thoughts looped endlessly. Police at the door. Questions. Flyers multiplying in the hallway. The canyon. Always the canyon. He pictured the dirt again. The shallow rise where the ground didn't sit quite right. He imagined rain softening it. Animals digging. A curious hiker stepping off the path. His chest tightened. He needed to check it again. One more time. Just to be sure. The decision felt inevitable. The canyon was colder than before. The air bit at his skin as he stepped out of the car. The wind carried a dry whisper that sounded almost conversational. He moved quickly, like flashlight beam jittering across brush and stone. The crooked tree emerged from the darkness like a bent finger pointing at the earth. His stomach dropped. The ground looked wrong. Not disturbed exactly, but uneven. A shallow depression where the soil had sunk slightly. He crouched, hands trembling as he brushed dirt aside. It gave too easily. Panic surged. He dug with bare hands, scraping soil away in frantic strokes. Dirt packed under his nails, his breathing turned ragged. The earth collapsed inward a few inches. A hollow pocket. His vision tunneled. No, 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 no. He pressed the dirt back, smoothing it desperately, packing it down, trying to restore what nature had already begun undoing. The ground resisted. It remembered. His pulse roared in his ears. Every sound in the canyon grew sharp, a branch snapping somewhere distant, leaves shifting, the wind carrying phantom footsteps. Someone's here. He spun around, flashlight beams slicing through darkness. Nothing. But the feeling remained. Watching. He backed away slowly, eyes locked on the disturbed soil. It sat there quietly, like a secret breathing just beneath the surface. He turned and ran. Back home, his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He scrubbed dirt from under his nails until the skin reddened. Tiny crescents of soil clung stubbornly, refusing to disappear. The sink water spiraled brown. Proof. He stared at it until the drain swallowed everything. Still, his hands didn't feel clean. He flexed them, imagining dirt trapped beneath the skin. The sensation crawled up his arms, phantom grit that wouldn't wash away. The ground is sinking. The thought pulsed relentlessly. It's coming back. He sat on the floor, back against the cabinet, breathing too fast. Morning felt impossibly far away. Sleep came in broken fragments. Each time he drifted off, he saw the soil collapsing, dirt folding inward like a mouth opening. Something pale just beneath pressing upward. He woke gasping, again and again. By dawn, exhaustion hollowed him out. His phone buzzed on the counter, a notification. Search teams expanding efforts, volunteers combing nearby trails. His stomach dropped. Nearby trails. The canyon, the words blurred as dread flooded his chest. He pictured strangers walking the paths, boots crunching over leaves, someone wandering just a little too far, finding soft ground. He stood too quickly, chair scraping loud against tile. He needed to act, do something, anything, because the earth was shifting, and secrets buried shallow never stayed buried for long. Kwong had not slept in days. Every shadow in the apartment seemed alive. Every sound, a distant car door, the hum of a refrigerator, footsteps in the hall, pressed against him. He could almost feel eyes on him everywhere, watching, judging. The search for Maribel was growing louder by the hour. Flyers covered the walls of nearby stores. Social media feeds overflowed with her face, her smile, her name in bold letters. Volunteers combed nearby trails. The canyon, once a hidden secret, had become a danger zone in his mind. He needed to make sure. He needed to check the canyon. But he didn't want to go back. Not in person. Not yet. Instead, he went to the public library. Quiet. Ordinary. He rented a laptop, pretending to research something mundane. Then he opened Google Maps. The canyon appeared on the screen, roads and trees laid out in precise detail. He zoomed in slowly, obsessively. The crooked tree, the exact spot where he had buried her. His fingers hovered over the mouse, tracing the terrain. He checked distances, routes, how far the vigil had been, how close anyone could wander without noticing. Everything felt safe. For a moment, relief surged. And then he deleted the search history. That should have been the end. Except it wasn't. Unbeknownst to him, the library computers were monitored. The police had been tracking his digital footprint since the search had intensified. Every map, every zoom, every click was logged. They saw the coordinates, they noted the time. They now had enough to narrow down exactly where he had hidden her. Later that day, the canyon was swarming with people. Volunteers, search teams, and police combed the ground. When the soil finally gave way, a shallow dip collapsing under the weight of a boot, the truth was unearthed. They found her. The moment the body was discovered, an alert went out to the officers monitoring the digital trail. They already had a suspect. They already knew he had been watching. The chase began quietly. Back at the library, Kwong left the computer, unaware of the eyes that had tracked him. The law was already moving in. By the time he returned home, police were waiting, carefully, methodically. They knocked on his door. Kwong froze. He tried to pretend calm, tried to act like a concerned roommate, worried about a missing friend, but the officers didn't ask casual questions. They asked for names, addresses, and last known locations. When they mentioned the library computers, the blood drained from his face. They knew. He stumbled through words, explanations, half-truths, nothing convincing. Panic sharpened every sentence. They stepped forward. Handcuffs clicked. Every instinct screamed at him to resist, to run, but it was useless. The canyon, the maps, the soil, the shadows, all of it had come together. The earth could hide a body, but it could not hide the person who buried it. As they led him away, Kwong caught a glimpse of the canyon in the distance. The crooked tree, the soil pressed flat. A perfect secret no longer. The world outside seemed alive with accusation. Every siren, every flash of light, every curious gaze was a reminder. The past always finds a way back, and now it had found him.